got it this time. You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering South Dakota. So, Lauren?
Yes, Kenzie.
Let's get scary.
I don't know when you're ever going to get that down.
I'm not.
So guess what I did today?
What'd you do today? Sorry.
Mackenzie decided that she wanted to be sick. And so...
Yes. That's exactly what I did.
So if you hear any clinking and clattering, I made her tea because I'm such a good host.
I'm trying to talk at a teacher volume because that seems to make it less raspy.
Too bad we're not doing our like Halloween episodes anymore because that could be like your super creepy voice.
Ooh, yeah, that would have been cool.
Yeah.
So we'll try. Hopefully, I sound like sexy.
Like Phoebe from Friends, her sexy voice. Yeah. I am wearing my Friends shirt today, the one that has all the horror movie characters on it.
That, yes.
Yes, it was a big hit. People were like staring at me at work, and I was like, "Oh yeah." And then today,
oh yeah,
I like pulled my shirt down. It was a whole thing. And then I went to vote today, so heads up,
cool.
Vote, people. When this episode comes out, you still have like a couple days until voting is like
it's like a
election
week, right?
day. Mm-hmm.
Next the 8th.
Yes, Tuesday. But
how does it always manage to fall on the 8th? Anyway.
So the lady who was like registering me in or everything, she was like staring at me. She goes, "Your shirt?" And I like showed her my shirt. She goes, "Oh, I love that." And I was like, "Thank you."
That's fantastic.
But yes, by the time this comes out, it will be after Halloween, but it is not yet Halloween yet. So.
Not yet Halloween yet.
Is that what I said?
Uh-huh.
Oh. So next episode, we'll be able to talk about the Halloween costumes and all Halloween things.
And it'll be spooky. End of spooky season and start of Kenzie season.
Did you listen to your whole pun thing for the episode?
Did I listen to it?
Did you find puns for your case? If you forgot, I'm going to punch you. I hate you. I found a case and I was like, how can I add puns into this? And I added 2 for you.
Okay, in my defense, I got really into this story.
You're the worst. I knew you were going to forget.
And I wasn't thinking that this technically comes out in November because I did it in October. So I wasn't thinking, but I will find a way to throw a pun in there.
I was going to say, you're going to have to think on your feet and get one in there.
I challenge accepted.
Oh, and also that spooky thing. Okay. So I think I kept it in the episode last week where our little skeleton lights went out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was like either that night or whenever I Snapchatted you, they randomly turned back on.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like doing whatever, and I came out and I saw them on, and I was like,
That's odd.
I don't like that.
Oh, my dad was telling me when he went up to visit my cousins, my aunt had moved from the house she was in to a new one. And it's very old.
Ooh.
It's like 100 years old. And I was like, I bet it's haunted. And I was like, I want to go there and see if it's haunted, but we're not staying there.
I was about to say, you want to go somewhere that's haunted.
We're going in the daytime. It's my aunt's house.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it's different because it's family.
Yeah.
And I'm sure as hell I ain't sleeping there.
Are you going to get like a hotel or something?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Probably. But
is that up in the Adirondacks?
No, but that's the same family.
Oh, okay.
They have a place in the Adirondacks, which also is quite old.
Oh. And the Adirondacks are quite creepy.
Yes. But no, she's in Rochester, New York.
Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh. You have to ask her if she's had any like stories or anything.
I can try. She's very intellectual, so I'm not quite sure what her beliefs are on ghostly matters.
I'd be interested to know.
I would be too. She has this knack. My sister and I always talk about it. Things that you don't tell anybody. She has this crazy ability to get you talking about things just by the way she asks these questions that you're like, I haven't told anybody this. Like, it's quite bizarre.
She should be a therapist.
She should be, but she's a professor instead.
Ah, well, I guess if she's intellectual.
Yes, she's...
Well, both you would need to be intellectual.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean.
You're going to have a lot of rambling today.
Well, then I will jump in to talk about South Dakota.
Yes, please.
So the largest T-Rex skeleton was found in South Dakota. It is named Sue, after Sue Hendrickson, who found the dinosaur skeleton in 1990.
At least they gave her credit.
South Dakota actually has more shoreline than all of Florida due to the many rivers and bodies of water that are in South Dakota.
Oh, I was going to say, there's no water there.
Yeah, isn't that weird? The Corn Palace is located here.
Ooh, corn. Da, 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 da. I don't know the words except for that part.
Apparently. There are more cows than people in South Dakota.
That I've heard before.
Yeah.
I think there's more sheep than people in Wyoming or something like that.
That's so weird.
Yeah.
And then I think the same thing is like true with kangaroos in Australia or something, that you'd have to fight like 7 kangaroos for every person if there was like a kangaroo war. I don't know. I could be totally wrong. South Dakota is very proud of being the home of Mount Rushmore. And every article you read is just all about Mount Rushmore. It took 14 years and more than $1 million to build. Today, that would have cost $17,421,224.
The story that I read about shit on Mount Rushmore because of taking it from the Native Americans.
Well, yeah, and I think I read somewhere that, and again, this could be completely wrong, but the Native Americans had already claimed that rock as like the forefathers rock, or like something that was like theirs.
It's a sacred rock.
Right.
It's part of some sort of sacred land that's I don't obviously it wasn't in the reservation, or else I don't think they could have done that, which they probably did that on purpose. But
probably.
When I was reading it, it was very much like these mountains were well known to be very sacred places for the Native Americans.
Yeah.
And they decided to put a bunch of faces on it that murdered most of them anyway. So,
yeah.
Don't worry, I touch on it.
In 2018, South Dakota was rated as the happiest and healthiest state. What?
Because my story debunks all that.
Well, good. I'm excited.
And the people who are answering that are clearly not these people.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
The coyote is the state's official animal. The state fossil is the Triceratops. And
not the T-Rex?
No.
I feel like that was a missed opportunity.
Right. And the state insect is the honeybee. There are a few dangerous animals in this state to include brown recluse spiders, the black widow, grizzly and black bears, mountain lions, bisons, and prairie rattlesnakes. Did you see the video of this hiker who's hiking by himself and a bear's attacking him?
No.
Oh my God, it's terrifying. Joe was watching it in bed the other night and I just hear this weird screaming. I'm like, what are you watching? Yeah, this dude was hiking by himself and this bear keeps like charging at him. So he's like yelling.
So yeah, let me record it.
Well, I don't know. I guess maybe if you die, that would be a good way to do it. Like, so people know what happened to you.
I suppose.
But so he's like yelling and making all these weird noises and obviously trying to scare the bear. And at one point, the bear like ran away and he was able to climb up onto like this rock thing. I don't know what happened after that. But I told Joe, I said, if that were me, we would have the National Guard come with a helicopter and pick me up off that thing because I wouldn't be getting down.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Bears are so freaking scary. There are over 60 Columbian mammoth bones located in hot springs at the Mammoth Site. It's literally called the Mammoth Site. The world's famous mashed potato wrestling contest takes place in Clark. This takes place on Humble Potato Day.
Love that.
I know. But I couldn't find out what Potato Day was or when this took place. It just said it was on Potato Day.
Well, let's see. Saturday, August 19th.
August 19th.
Next year. It'll be on Saturday, August 19th.
Okay. Oh, today is National Pumpkin Day.
Yes.
Happy National Pumpkin Day.
Happy National Pumpkin Day.
On July 15th, 2006, the highest temperature in the state was observed at 120 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 39 degrees Celsius. And on February 17th, 1936, the lowest was recorded at negative 58 Fahrenheit, which is negative 50 Celsius.
Bruh.
Yeah, no thank you. South Dakota produces more sunflowers than any other state.
Love that.
I love it. Though Kansas is named the Sunflower State.
Interesting.
Yes.
Miscommunication going on over there.
And then there's another state that also produces more sunflowers than Kansas, yet they're still the Sunflower State. You know, it's what it's.
What?
This one thing I listened to, instead of saying it is what it is, they say it's what it's. And I love it so much.
Oh, man. Alrighty, that's new.
I love it. I say it often, but I don't say it around people who, like, don't know me, because then that would be weird. So.
Yeah, but let's put it on a podcast that could be reaching
I explained
it. Okay.
So, South Dakota is the 5th least populous state in the U.S., but the 17th largest state size-wise. Brock Lesnar, a professional wrestler, was born in Webster. The surgeon who linked smoking and cancer, Alton Oshner, was born in Kendall. And those are the state facts about South Dakota. There
Love
wasn't a ton of interesting things that I could find online. I'm sure South Dakota, there's a ton of really interesting things about your state, but they're not online.
Yeah. South Dakota.
Yeah.
South Dakota.
There's actually a lot about South Dakota, though.
Yeah, there was. I was surprised. Maybe it's North Dakota that's boring.
It might be, actually. Because there are some states that there's not a ton of
Well, if you got
things.
more animals than people, it's going to be kind of hard.
Right.
Like,
Good point.
the animals can't tell us stories,
Sadly.
Oh,
how cute would that be?
it would be.
All right, Mackenzie.
Okay.
What are you talking about?
So before I dive in, I do want to give a bit of a trigger warning that this legend does discuss the topic of suicide and various mental health topics. At the end, I have like kind of a closing thought if it's be something that you would want to listen to. But like always, do what's best for you at this time. So the legend I bring you today comes from the Oglala Sioux tribe in the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. My first initial reason for looking into this legend was because it was spooky and we're a spooky podcast.
Yeah.
And like I have with previous stories, I also want to bring attention to topics that are important to shed light on. No pun there, because it's not about a lighthouse.
Oh, real quick, you're going to absolutely love Maine.
Okay.
There are so many lighthouses there, so you'll be able to find a lighthouse story, no problem.
Hell yeah. Love lighthouse.
I know. Have you ever heard of Zandy Schaefer?
No.
He also is obsessed with lighthouses. And so he has a whole like TikTok thing where he goes to lighthouses and visits lighthouses and talks about them. You should totally listen to him.
I should listen to him.
Okay, sorry, go on.
I'm going to live in a lighthouse. So while I want to entertain with my stories, I also want to inform you in the process. So if you or someone you know is struggling with ideas of suicide, thoughts of suicide, you can call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling 988.
Yep.
Very simple.
Yeah.
So now I bring you the legend of Walking Sam. Not to be confused with Sitting Sam.
Was that your pun?
No, because it's not a pun. Just wanted to throw it in there. So the legend of Walking Sam begins with the Stick Indians, or the spirits of the Lakota. These evil spirits are shadow people or dark people who haunt reservations to lure people out to their demise. They have a death cloud that surrounds them as they stalk their victims. You know their presence because you're going to hear a whistling sound, almost kind of like, at least the way it was described, not like wind whistling, but like someone's
Like
trying to get your attention whistling.
Oh, ew.
Yeah.
I don't like that one at all.
Yeah.
Oh, ew.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah. It's creepy.
Mm-mm.
So people follow the sound, and some believe that these beings have the power to hypnotize, paralyze, or make you go crazy. I was hoping to find another rhyming word with hypnotize and paralyze, but there wasn't. And they will seek revenge on anyone who disrespects them. And one site I read said these spirits are so feared by the Lakota that they are seldom talked about, so little is known about them outside of the tribe. That's one place. So Walking Sam is known to be one of these kinds of spirits.
Okay.
He is a walking, 7-foot-tall, dark figure that has no eyes or mouth. And he has a tall, thin body and a tall hat. Yes, I'm sure he sounds very familiar to other boogeymen.
Mm-hmm.
Some reports claim that the Lakota people have referred to him as Stovepipe Hat Bigfoot, because that's the kind of hat he has.
Yeah.
Or just Big Man.
Okay.
Which I like. Very simple. Straight to the point. Big Man.
You know exactly who you're talking about.
Exactly. So he tells his victims their lives are not worthy, and he can get into their minds to convince them that their lives are not worth living. He convinces them to take their life and carries each native man or woman with him. Some say that when he stretches out his arms, you can see his victims hanging under them.
Oh.
So it's very creepy. So, the sad part. There have been almost 1,000 suicide attempts between 2004 and 2013.
Oh my God.
On this reservation specifically. Or with this tribe specifically. The reservation is huge. It's the largest reservation. And so from what it sounds like, I think there's multiple Sioux tribes that live on
the
here.
reservation.
Yeah. And this tribe is the one that I'm focusing on.
Okay.
So any statistics and facts that I give are based on this tribe. So in December of 2015, there was 103 suicide attempts on the reservation. One report I read said that could be upwards of 241 over a 3-month period.
Jeez.
The ages range between like 12, 24, 25.
Oh, wow. So like really young.
Uh-huh. On December 12th, a 14-year-old boy had hung himself in his home on the reservation.
Wait, December 12th of what year?
2015.
Oh.
Or 14.
I also have a December 12th in my story.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It's from the articles I read, which were all like in April. I think this is December of 2014 leading into 2015.
Okay.
So on December 12th, a 14-year-old boy had hung himself on his home on the reservation. On Christmas Day, they found a 15-year-old girl, and in January, a cheerleader from a local high school. 2 more young lives were claimed in both February and in March, and the youngest to die was 12.
Oh my gosh.
The adults and elders of the tribe would find various posts on Facebook that shared videos of kids making nooses or writing messages encouraging others to end their life or cause self-harm.
What the heck?
I know. Thomas Poorbear, who is the vice president of the Oglala Lakota tribe, was informed of a post that showed a tree in the small community of Porcupine with 4 nooses hanging from the branches. Tribal police removed nooses and thought it was some sort of invitation for people to take their life at this place. Poorbear's niece was 24 and one of the 2 adults who had committed suicide that winter. A local tribe pastor, John Tubles, I love these names.
Yeah.
Was informed of a group suicide taking place outside the town of Pine Ridge. He and other adults rushed to the scene and were able to stop the teens from going through with their plan. They counseled them, making sure that they don't follow through with anything. And another report claimed of a teacher stopping a group of high school girls who wanted to take their lives together. A group.
Wow.
Yeah. So there are theories about who or what Walking Sam is.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also theories about the causes of the suicides, why there's so many.
Yeah.
And an epidemic is happening among these young people. So I'm going to talk about both.
Okay.
So we're going to start with Walking Sam. Trying to see if I can fit in a pun in here.
You should all see Mackenzie's thinking face.
Oh, this is harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry. I know. That was my idea and I messed up.
Some of mine aren't so much puns. Some of them are more like, not play on words, because that's what a pun is.
That is.
I know. You'll see. Like fitting well-known phrases.
So there are some theories that tend to stroll around about who or what Walking Sam is.
You're the worst.
I did it though. And his reasoning for what he does. So some legends say he is forced to walk the earth for all eternity as punishment. Did not say what he was punished for.
Yeah, just punished.
Just punished. And he seeks companionship and has to lure people away from their companions for them to be his companions.
Okay.
And he prefers teens and young children because they're easily susceptible to his intrusive thoughts. There's one theory that they might not be evil spirits at all. They might be protectors of the land. And if people cross it, then they are met with deadly revenge.
Okay.
So there is an account from a local medicine man that was in a book from 1983, and it says, "There is your big man standing there, ever waiting, ever present, like the coming of a new day. He is both spirit and real being, but he can also glide through the forest like a moose with big antlers, as though the trees weren't there. I know him as my brother. I want him to touch me, just a touch, a blessing, something I could bring home to my sons and grandchildren, that I was there, that I approached him and he touched me." So this idea being that this spirit has ties to Bigfoot and where that story comes from. Comes from this.
Okay.
Howsoever, that does not explain this influx of suicides on the reservations.
Yeah.
So now we're going to the theories of that. So the first, of course, is that it's the work of Walking Sam. So think of it similar to when those teens were all about Slender Man and said that he told them to do whatever.
Which I covered in our Wisconsin episode.
Available wherever you get your podcast. So that was kind of the basis of what people were thinking.
That's kind of what I thought of when you first said it.
Yeah, and like I even saw one on one site that some of the Facebook posts, classmates were saying, I wonder who's going to be next.
Ew.
All this stuff because they happen so consistently.
Yeah.
So I think, it sounds like maybe the kids kind of started this phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, there's more than just that,
Right.
because that's not why people do those things.
Right.
So, because of this theory, there is also the idea that Walking Sam is a metaphor
Okay.
for the hurt and trauma that have been experienced by the Lakota people.
Oh, interesting.
And let me tell you about it. So, let's begin from the beginning. Let's begin from the beginning.
The best place to do it.
The best place to do it. In 1890, this area was home to the site of the Wounded Knee Massacre.
Oh, yeah, I read about this.
For those of you that are unfamiliar with the darker, truther side of...
Truther?
Yeah.
Okay.
More truth side, but I didn't want to say more truth. I want to say truther.
Okay.
Of American history. Wounded Knee is where soldiers of the 7th Cavalry slaughtered 300 Native American men, women, and children. Dr. Maria Horse Braveheart, which I think is an awesome name.
Yeah.
Who is Hunkpapa and Oglala Lakota. Hopefully I'm saying that right, and I do apologize if I'm not. Which is why I think that there's multiple Sioux Lakota tribes in the area. Because I know that that's where my geography and American history remembers right. That's where they were.
Okay.
But I don't know. So she is the co-founder of the Takini Network, which helps Indigenous people heal from historical trauma. And she says, the historical trauma response is a constellation of features in reaction to massive group trauma. The response is observed among Lakota and other Native populations, Jewish Holocaust survivors and descendants, and Japanese American internment camp survivors and descendants. And then she goes on to say, Native Americans have, for over 500 years, endured physical, emotional, social, and spiritual genocide from European and American colonist policy. So this trauma is important to understand because it leads to the cycle of abuse that are seen by families when they're constantly seeing family members taken away, whether it's parents or children.
Yeah.
And their belief systems are also taken away, told that they're wrong, trying to get rid of them altogether.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at their life today, because the whole one of the happiest places is a load of horseshit. So Oglala, there's so many Oglala Lakota County is the second poorest county in the United States.
Oh.
In 2015, it was reported that 2,000 of the tribe's households made less than 30% of the national median.
Jeez.
And that 30,000 residents were living below the poverty line. Unemployment is between 80 and 90%. In 2002, less than a third of the $9 million that the Pine Ridge crop produced went to the tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it was on leased land from the government that they would give to farmers outside of the reservation.
Mm-hmm.
There are some of the highest rates of drug and alcohol abuse. Children are being put into foster care at alarming rates, and infant mortality is 5 times higher than the national average.
Jeez.
Native women are twice as high than the national average to be sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
So Ruth Hopkins, who is a chief tribal judge for the Spirit Lake Nation and a tribal judge for the Yankton Sioux and Crow Creek Sioux tribe, said, when I tried to commit suicide, I was 22 years old. I had suicidal thoughts before that, but it was something I hadn't dealt with. I was born into poverty. All through my adolescence, I knew people who committed suicide. It's something that's always there. She told this blog site, Truth Out, which is a nonprofit news organization dedicated to providing independent reporting, commentary on diverse range of social justice issues, which is from their website, that she was assaulted when she was 15 years old. And most Native women don't report it because they know no prosecutions will be made.
Right.
The U.S. Department of Justice reported that 1 of every 3 Native women are raped in their life. And in most reports, the perpetrators are said to be non-Native, which is probably why they're not prosecuted, which is sad.
Yeah.
Life expectancy for men was 48 years old, and for women is 52.
Jeez.
Yeah. One article I read describes the homes as most people live in clusters of mobile homes, some so dilapidated that the insulation is visible from outside. At night, trailers are surrounded by 7 or 8 rusting cars, not because someone is hosting a party, but because 20 or 25 people live inside. Horses wander on the seemingly endless pastures, some with their rib bones showing.
Aww.
President of the tribe, John Yellowbird Steely, declared a suicide state of emergency because of the increased suicides and suicide attempts. They had also done that in 2010, by the way. So this allowed for more federal funding and counselors to be sent to the reservation to help the ones who were already there with the overwhelming workload that they had. And so there is more that is being done to help, not all sad. There is a large number of suicide attempts that do go unreported. And according to Eileen Janis, who is a volunteer with Sweetgrass Suicide Prevention Project, she says that most teenagers won't report feelings of suicide to the Indian Health Service because then they're sent off the reservation to support groups with non-native people.
Mm-hmm.
The Sweetgrass Suicide Prevention Project provides training in suicide prevention that are based in Lakota values and culture. And the Mitakupi Foundation was founded to help prevent teen suicide. They have a 24-hour hotline, and their purpose is to, quote, create programs for reservation youth and to support the work of existing programs that give reservation youth the same support and opportunities that all other children in America have, the first and foremost being hope.
Aww.
The Pine Ridge School, which teaches grades K through 8, is looking to use federal funding to set up dormitories for students so they don't have to go home over the weekends, for those that home is not a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
Local tribe members affected by suicide, whether they attempted or know someone who was, are advocates for raising awareness to this epidemic among Native teens. According to the CDC, suicide rates among Native Americans range between ages 15 to 34, and that is 3 times higher than the national average.
Dang.
Regardless of the theory that you want to believe behind the Walking Sam, his destruction of young lives is one that should be taken very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
So, my final thought. Mental health is finally starting to get the recognition it deserves as a health crisis in this country and around the world.
Yeah, not as stigmatized.
Mm-hmm. And while these stories are hard to hear and break our hearts, they are stories of real people. And sharing the hard stories lead to good conversations and change. And it is important to tell everyone's story and bring awareness to situations that require attention and change. And I do hope that those of you who are going through a hard time, no matter what the severity of it is, that you find peace in your life soon. And if you don't feel like you can reach out to the ones closest to you, there are so many resources available to you to get the help that you might need. And we love all our spooky listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So if you ever are feeling like you don't have anyone that loves you, we love you.
Yeah.
And again, in case you didn't hear it the first time, the Suicide Crisis Prevention Hotline is 988.
Super easy to remember now instead of a long string of numbers.
Exactly. So that's my soapbox of Walking Sam. I'm at the end of my trail.
Uh-huh.
And now it's your turn.
You're the worst.
I put in 2. I'm now matched with you.
Okay, so this case is a weird one, so buckle up. It'll make sense. All right, it was December 12th, 1992 in Lake Andes, South Dakota.
Carolina.
I don't know.
Huh.
South Dakota. Lake Andes is in Charles Mix County and is a small town. So it was a frigid morning, 31 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 0.5 degrees Celsius at 6 a.m. when 20-year-old Arnold Archambeau and his 18 and 19-year-old girlfriend, Ruby Bruguier, and Ruby's 17-year-old cousin, Tracy Dion, were driving down a remote part of Highway 281.
Buckle up because they were in a car.
Yep.
Got it.
So side note, Ruby and her cousin Tracy very much look like cousins, and it was very funny.
What?
They look like they're cousins, and
Yeah.
they very much look like cousins. I just like when families look like each other. And you can tell, like, as I was looking at the pictures, I was like, oh, they are definitely related.
I have rarely seen cousins that look alike.
I know. But yeah, you look at them and you're like, oh, they're so related. So conditions on this road were not good. It was cold, the roads were icy, and it was early in the morning. Bad conditions for even the most experienced driver. But the driver of this car was not experienced. He was 20 years old. And to make matters worse, the 3 riding in the car had all been drinking. Arnold pulled up to an intersection on this remote stretch of the highway at the edge of the Yankton Sioux Indian Reservation in his Chevrolet Monte Carlo. Arnold stopped at the intersection, then when all seemed good, he left. This is when his car lost control, jumped the highway, and landed upside down in a ditch on the side of the road. The ditch was between the road and a set of abandoned railroad tracks, and it had been frozen over due to the cold. The car sat there for a bit until later that morning law enforcement and paramedics showed up. When paramedics got to the car, only one person was inside. Tracy, the cousin. She was pulled out and taken to the hospital immediately, where I believe she made a full recovery, but Arnold and Ruby were nowhere to be found. The whole surrounding area was searched, looking for the bodies of Arnold and Ruby, or really any clues at all, but all searches came up empty. So background on our 2 missing passengers. Arnold and Ruby were both Yankton Sioux. Remember how they had been driving on the reservation?
Mm-hmm.
A little information about the Yankton Sioux is that they're based in Wagner, South Dakota, and are the only Dakota-Lakota tribe that is based in the state. So maybe they're all in the same area?
The only Lakota.
That's what I read on whatever website I found this on. Maybe they're, I don't know. I guess could be wrong based on your information.
I tried to like double check too to make sure that like, because at first I thought that the tribe was the whole reservation, but then that's when I realized they're part of the reservation because the reservation is like 2 million acres.
No idea. But they still have their traditional government. The Indian Reorganization Act tried to change that, but the Sioux were opposed to the act and didn't conform to it.
So maybe their tribe is something specific.
Maybe.
That they have that the other ones don't. I don't know.
I have no idea.
If you know, let us know.
Yeah. But Arnold and Ruby had grown up on the reservation. In high school, they began dating and soon fell completely in love. Arnold was described as a nice young man who had never been in any serious trouble. He grew up with his aunt, Karen Tuttle, after his mother died when he was only 13. His aunt pushed him to do well in school and continued to push him to graduate. And Arnold was well-liked and popular in school. He was even crowned prom king his senior year. Ruby was described as being a gentle person with a carefree attitude, always laughing and joking around. She got along well enough with her parents and never said anything harsh to them. She was responsible, and if she did anything wrong, she always ended up telling her parents about it. So both kids seemed to have good relationships with the adults in their lives. Then in 1991, Arnold and Ruby had their first daughter, Erica Marie. What?
I just wasn't expecting them to have a child.
And they were young. In 1991, Arnold would have been around 19 and Ruby would have been about 17.
What's weird is that, like, their kid is our age.
Ew, yeah. Yeah. So it was a struggle for these two young kids to now be raising a kid of their own.
Yeah.
And they were kids, so they wanted to party and do teenager things rather than having to settle down to raise a child. But they,
I still want to do teenager things.
Right. But they were, doing what they had to do.
Sure.
But they still wanted those teenage moments. So on Saturday, December 11th, 1992, the couple dropped off their daughter with Tracy's father, where she would be staying the night. Then the three, Arnold, Ruby, and Tracy,
disappeared without a trace. I got a pun for your story.
How's that a pun?
Tracy.
Oh. There you go. So then the three, Arnold, Ruby, and Tracy, went out for a, quote, all-night party spree. They partied all night and didn't return back to Tracy's house until 6 a.m. the next morning of December 12th.
You know what time I went to bed on Saturday?
When?
I went home at like 8:30. Because we were all tired.
Yeah. I feel that. Joe and I are usually in bed by like 8:30.
Like.
I need to be sleeping by 9:15.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. We're going to a spooky forest on Friday. You weren't invited because I know you don't like scary things.
Yeah.
But so we're going, and I was like, man, how am I going to stay awake all day long and then go?
I'm sure that the thing scaring you will wake you right up.
I heard it's really fun, so I'm excited.
Well, that's good. I'm glad it's going to be fun.
I heard it's really scary.
That doesn't sound fun.
I know, it's what you'll wear.
Oh, yeah.
So when they arrived back to Tracy's house, her father, so Ruby's uncle, was up and waiting for them. But when Arnold told the uncle that they were ready to pick up Erica, he said no. He noticed that the trio had been drinking, so he just suggested that they leave Erica with him and they could come get her later that afternoon.
Smart dude.
Yes, once they were sober. So very responsible decision on all parties.
Absolutely.
So they agreed. Tracy told her dad she wouldn't be staying, though. She was going to go back out with Arnold and Ruby, and the three left. It wasn't like a hostile interaction or anything at all. It was just
everything was normal.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Because when I was writing that, I was like, this sounds like they're really mad at each other. They're really not. It was just a very smart decision to keep the daughter and for the three to keep doing what they want to do. So the trio all got back into Arnold's car, and a few minutes later, they were at the intersection where we started the story. So the next part of what happened when they came up to the intersection is according to Tracy. So the trio pulled up to the intersection. They checked for cars, looked both ways, realized there were no other cars, so they pulled through. This is when the car spun out. Next thing she knew, the car was upside down in a ditch.
Oof.
Tracy said, quote, it was just like the snap of a finger before the flip. She said then that her and Ruby began to call out for help, and during the whole part, Tracy said that she noticed that only her and Ruby were in the car. Arnold was not, and she remembers wondering where he could have been.
Huh.
Ruby then began to cry out, oh my God, and started hitting the car in frustration. Like, that mad kind of thing. Yeah. Then just a few moments later, Ruby's door opened, and Ruby was able to squeeze and crawl her way out of the car. But right as Tracy tried to do the same thing, the car door slammed shut. She recalls wondering why in the world Arnold and her cousin Ruby would leave her stuck in an upside-down car.
Yeah.
Overall, she was ditched.
Ha! Nice!
Thank you. Thank you. There's the pun.
Love it. That was a good one.
I literally, I was laying in bed the other night, and I was like, she was ditched. That's the pun. myself so I wouldn't forget.
I like it. That's a good one.
Thank you. So Tracy was interviewed by Unsolved Mysteries for season 7, episode 18, and said that if it had been her who had gotten out, she wouldn't have left her cousin. She would have helped her get out.
Yeah. Or said, like, I'm going to come back or something.
Right. So Tracy just seemed really hurt and confused as to why her cousin left her in that car, all alone, in a ditch at like 6 a.m.
Fair.
So finally, a few hours later, the police and emergency personnel showed up. Tracy was hysterical when police arrived, and when she settled down a bit and was rescued from the car, she asked the police where Arnold and Ruby were, but she was informed that no one else was in the car and that she had been alone when they arrived. She also did admit that the three had been drinking. So the police searched all over the area where the accident occurred. The ditch where the car had landed was frozen solid, but police feared that maybe Arnold and Ruby had started walking away from the accident, maybe to get help, maybe to hide, but either way, they feared that the couple had fallen under the ice at some other location. So they're searching everywhere. They searched along the abandoned railroad tracks, walked towards a frozen lake that was nearby.
Was there any, like, footprints or anything?
It didn't say.
Okay.
Which is actually a good point because it would have been like snowy out. But they just extensively searched the entire area. Anywhere they thought this couple could have walked to could have ended up. Deputy of the Charles Mix County Sheriff's Department, Bill Youngstrom, was called to the scene. He actually had a lot of knowledge of these kinds of accidents as he has seen and worked them before. He said that these types of accidents are usually caused by the driver partying, drinking, then deciding to drive.
Sure.
He said, quote, "We walked around the ice part. We had one officer walk on the opposite side of the railroad tracks, thinking maybe they wandered off towards the lake area, which was also frozen. I've been to a number of accidents where there hasn't been somebody around. The driver hasn't been there, no passengers there, and a lot of times it's because they've been partying, out drinking. I mean, we do have a DWI law. That was initially my first thought. Maybe Arnold was out drinking and didn't want to get arrested, so we figured he'd show up in a few days." But Karen, Arnold's aunt, knew he wasn't hiding. She knew that he would have either just come home and accepted the outcome or would have at least called her to let her know that he was okay. But
Sure.
she hadn't heard from him, and that was unusual. Ruby's mother, Myrtle Bruguier, was sort of on the same page as Karen. She knew that her daughter wouldn't go so long without seeing her daughter, because they had a kid,
Yeah.
or without at least contacting her family.
Sure.
She was also the daughter who they said if she did something wrong, she would tell her parents she did something wrong.
Right.
She immediately began to think that Ruby had to be hurt and wasn't able to contact them, hence why they haven't heard from her. For months, no trace of Arnold or Ruby were found.
Wow.
And no contact was made from them. Deputy Youngstrom soon took on this case and made it his mission to find out what happened to the young couple. He investigated every lead. He worked tirelessly, but day after day, he came up with nothing. That is until March 10th, 1993. Almost 3 months later, a driver would be passing by the ditch where the accident had occurred and would notice, in the still thawing ditch, something concerning: a frozen body. Deputy Youngstrom was shocked when he received the call that a body had been found. Rushing to the scene, he was met with the gruesome discovery. This was the body of Ruby.
Oh my God.
Her clothes were completely intact and seemed to be the one she had been wearing the night of the accident, but her glasses and shoes were missing. Her body had decomposed a fair amount, which makes sense for the time that has elapsed. It was actually decomposed so much that it was hard to recognize her, and she had to be ID'd by a tattoo on her ankle.
So she was there the whole time.
The weird part is that her body had been found in the ditch they had landed in on their first crash. The ditch that had been completely frozen over and had already been extensively searched 3 months prior.
Okay, so no.
This discovery led police to decide to drain the ditch, and when they did, the next day at noon, Arnold's body was found, submerged in the water about 75 feet away from the initial crash site and 15 feet away from where Ruby had been found. Also in the same area that had been extensively searched 3 months prior, but his body was in a completely different condition than Ruby's had been in. He was far less decomposed than Ruby, and none of his body was frozen to the ground like hers had been.
And wouldn't the cold, like, preserve the body more?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. His skin color was also described as normal, and his clothes were also intact, but investigators were unsure if they were the same clothes he had been wearing the night of the accident or not. So yeah, this ditch area where the two bodies were found had been searched repeatedly.
And, like, enough that they would have dug something up.
They would have found something.
Yeah.
They absolutely would have found something. And Deputy Youngstrom is, like, very hard on the fact where he's like, if they had been here, we would have found them.
Yeah.
So the bodies were immediately taken to have autopsies performed. Due to the conditions they had been in and time taken for the bodies to be found, time of death was unable to be determined. As for cause of death, no foul play was evident. The coroner finally concluded that both Arnold and Ruby had died of exposure and had not been injured in that initial accident.
Oh, shit.
But this conclusion didn't make a ton of sense to our deputy. He felt that their cause of death, death by exposure, meant that they had frozen to death, which he believes may be correct, but he doesn't think it happened in the ditch they had been found in. He says that there is no way they were there for those 3 months.
Right.
He had personally walked that ditch multiple times. He had written affidavits for innocent people who had walked that route to get more info. He knew that had their bodies been in the ditch from the beginning, they wouldn't have been missed.
Right.
He knows that Arnold and Ruby did not freeze to death in that ditch, and he is. That's
Very
his.
sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
More evidence was found later that supported the deputy's theory that the two had not died in the ditch where they were found. Alongside the road, a tuft of hair had been discovered. And after forensics had been done on the hair, it was revealed that it had belonged to Ruby, which the detective doesn't believe would have stayed alongside the road for 3 months.
Sure.
He theorizes that the hair ended up there when her and Arnold's bodies were moved back to the ditch from a different location. Also in Arnold's pockets were a set of keys. One key that belonged to a vehicle and 2 that appeared to be house keys. But Deputy Youngstrom still hasn't been able to find the vehicle or the house that the keys belong to. So he still has those keys in his possession to this day.
But not the keys to the car he was driving.
Nope, they have no idea what these keys are.
What?
Also, a witness had come forward to claim that they had actually seen Arnold a few weeks after the crash on New Year's Eve in a car accompanied by 3 other people. The deputy believed that this is actually a credible sighting. The witness knew Arnold personally and had zero doubt that the person she saw in the car was Arnold. It was even implied that she had spoken to Arnold that night, like through the car. She was administered a polygraph and passed. So yes, they are inadmissible in court, but they're still a good piece of knowledge. Like you can't use them, but it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
And by her passing this test, it either means that she is a good liar or that she truly believes that she spoke to Arnold that night. So it could be like with the lie detectors, you just have to believe it. Yeah. So it could be a complete lie, but as long as you believe it, it's not a lie to you, you know? So to her, this isn't a lie. She talked to Arnold that night.
Yeah.
The witness was able to identify the couple who had been in the car with Arnold. They were brought in and questioned. They too were given a polygraph. In the polygraph, they denied being in the car with Arnold, but both ended up failing.
What?
They were continued to be questioned intensely, but the whole time they claimed that they had only been home that night and maintained that they had not been with Arnold. And again, since it's not admissible, they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
This one witness sort of opened the floodgates, and 5 more witnesses came forward claiming to have seen Arnold and or Ruby after they had disappeared. One witness claimed that on the night of the accident, they had seen Ruby and Arnold get into another car, and that car headed east. But with this one, I don't know if I believe this one. Because Tracy said that when they went through the intersection, there were no other cars around.
Yeah, and she would have heard a car pull up.
Right.
She
and
was
like
conscious enough to hear that.
Yeah, and like why wouldn't that other person have tried to help or have called the cops? Like, I don't know. That one just sounded kind of weird to me. Another witness claimed they had seen 2 men near this ditch just hours before the bodies had been discovered on March 10th. They had been driving a dark, Blazer-style vehicle, but these men have never been found. Another witness claimed that they saw Ruby on January 20th in Wagner, South Carolina, which happens to be close to the lake that they were all near.
You mean South Dakota?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what is going on. So it happens.
I'm like, that's really fucking far away.
South Dakota, which happens to be close to Lake Andes. But nothing came from any of the additional witness testimonies. So some theories about what happened. Ruby's father, Quentin, believes that the couple died somewhere else and that their bodies were then moved to the ditch they were found in to make it look like that's where they had died. He stood by this fact that this is what happened to his daughter and Arnold. Quentin sadly died on October 17th, 2001 without ever knowing what happened to her.
Aww.
Karen, Arnold's aunt, believes that the couple was killed. I think she also believes that they didn't die where they were found.
Yeah.
But both Arnold's family and Ruby's family don't believe the cops did enough in the investigation, that they could have done more. But I believe except Deputy Youngstrom, because he really, like, this was his whole thing.
Sure.
He wanted one day to be able to tell the 2 families what happened to Arnold and Ruby. So he said in his interview with Unsolved Mysteries that when Erica, the couple's daughter, asks what happens to her parents, he wants to be able to give her an answer rather than saying, I don't know.
Aww.
We know. So another interesting theory that I read about is that this may be related to the whole missing 411 thing. So like the woods, David Paulides, missing in the woods thing.
What?
Missing 411 is the whole like people who go missing in the woods or have weird experiences in the woods.
I remember 411 being what you call if you need to figure out somebody's number.
Yeah. Yes. But so yeah, missing 411 is like this big thing. It's like it's just big. So apparently, the weird events of this case fit the criteria for the whole missing 411 thing. There are a few different categories that missing people can fall into in this whole realm. So in this specific case, Arnold and Ruby would fall into the missing being found in an area previously searched category. So meaning they were missing.
That's very specific.
I know, but I get it's like a common category, I guess. Another weird missing 411 trend is missing shoes. And Ruby's shoes were missing. Also,
which is weird.
It's like, very
that
weird.
doesn't make any sense.
No, with her clothes being completely intact.
Yeah.
And often these victims also disappear near water.
Especially in the cold.
Yeah. But so these victims also disappear near water, so again, check. So they do fit.
Oh, it was the water.
The ditch.
Oh, the ditch had water in it?
Yeah, it was frozen over.
Oh!
That's where they were found when they had to pump the ditch out. It was because there was water. It took me a while to realize that too, but yeah.
Well, I guess if it was frozen over, they would have been on top.
Yeah.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the fact that Arnold was found under
making all
in the thawing water. Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So another theory deals with hypothermia. So it was cold the morning of the accident, so hypothermia could come on fast. Early signs of hypothermia are confusion and lack of coordination.
And if they're already drunk.
And mixed with alcohol, this is just a bad combo. So an alcohol jacket is a thing. So that can make one feel warm when they actually aren't. It also makes your body lose heat faster. So the confusion from potentially early onset hypothermia could be a big factor.
I have never, in my entire drinking years, ever felt like I had an alcohol jacket.
Me either. Never once.
Never.
I still am freezing when people are like,
Yes.
just drink enough. I say, no, that doesn't help.
And then the problem is if I'm really cold and I chatter my teeth, I shiver too hard, I throw up. So, it's a whole thing.
So I sort of feel like maybe they were being targeted by someone.
Oh, for sure.
So maybe when the crash happened, Arnold was ejected from the car. But for some reason, I feel like, I don't know why. And of course, I'm not a cop. I don't have any knowledge.
Right.
But I feel like she was pulled out of the car, maybe by someone with not so great intentions.
That could have been
when I first read the case,
yeah.
That's what I thought was going to be like the conclusion.
Because the cousin couldn't get out, I'm assuming.
No, because at least in the reenactment they showed on Unsolved Mysteries, the car flips and it's a small car. So the only way you can get out is if you open the door and have that room to slide out.
And because why couldn't she open the door?
I guess maybe how she was angled, she wasn't able to.
Oh, okay.
So when the door opened for Ruby to get out, Tracy tried to start to crawl her way out. But then they closed it and she couldn't open it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It had to be open from the outside.
I don't know. I mean, doors stop working in accidents.
Was the windshield broken?
It didn't say. Nothing else was really talked about. But at least in the reenactment, it looked fine.
Because I was going to say, if the windshield's broken because he flew through it.
Well, we don't know.
And that also would have killed him right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have no idea. No idea. So I read a few other theories. One is that Ruby and Arnold got out of the car then due to having been drinking. They laid down on the surface of this frozen ditch because they were drunk. Their body heat caused a layer of ice to melt, and then they progressively got colder, causing the water to eventually freeze again back on top of them.
Not bad.
So that's one theory I heard. Other theories say that they died of exposure. So how long had they been out in the woods before that happened? Why had they not tried to seek help? What was going on for them to be in the woods that long to die of exposure when they're
Sure.
not super far? Because it did say they left the uncle's house and then just a couple minutes later,
Well, and
they went through the intersection.
And if they're in water, even if it's frozen, and if they died right there from the accident or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
they would have the same level of decomposition.
Exactly. That's another thing. People are like, why are there different levels of decomposition?
It seems like that would be a plausible idea for Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like she might have died right away.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like Arnold died right away.
Yeah, but then her body also wasn't found in those 3 months of people searching.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
So the FBI ended up closing the case in 1999, stating that it had just been a tragic accident, but nothing more, and deemed no foul play had been involved in their accident.
Damn.
That both bodies had been ruled to have died due to exposure. But many agents even, and family members, believe that this just isn't true, and that there had been foul play involved, and that Arnold and Ruby had been killed elsewhere, and their bodies had been placed in the ditch. A $5,000 reward is being offered in this case. If you have any information about the deaths of Arnold Archambeau and Ruby Bruguier, please contact the Yankton Sioux Tribal Police at 605-487-7500, or you can visit the Unsolved Mystery website at https://unsolved.com/tips/ to submit a tip on the case. And this case has been covered on a few episodes, so I watched the Unsolved Mysteries Season 7, Episode 18, an older version with Robert Stack. I also read that they were also featured on Season 14, Episode 39, but I was not able to find that one, so can't verify. And still to this day, no one knows what happened to Arnold and Ruby.
Interesting.
Yes.
How bizarre.
There are so many theories. And as I was reading this case, it was like, so this happened. And then it gets worse. And then, then this part. And then it gets worse. So, yeah, they have no idea what happened.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely buckled up for that one.
See that pun there?
You took me on a real trip.
See, you can come up with all of these now.
Well, yeah, because you're talking, so I'm thinking.
Ah, yes. You didn't have your thinking face on.
Because there was already a thought.
You just have to be better next week.
Yeah.
for the month of requirements that you put forth.
I put a pun in there, didn't I? Put 2. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Might
you
have
did.
been spur of the moment, but those are the best kinds of puns.
You did. And I already have one of my cases for like another month or like another state that we're doing. And I'm like, oh God, I don't know how that's going to work with a pun.
You know what's annoying?
Hmm.
Is that you have this stuff done. And you're like, oh, I have this case done.
No, I
that
have
case.
it done because I was going to do it for DC. And then realized that it didn't really take place in
You're
DC.
Still an overachiever.
It's how I am. Thank you.
Yeah, you couldn't help me in chemistry.
Chemistry, absolutely not.
I don't know. I just can't do it.
No, that's math.
That's also what you said in chemistry.
I'm not good at chemistry. Our teacher hated us.
No,
Hated
she hated
me.
you.
She hated me. Oh my God.
Oh, it was great because I was like, I'm the one failing and she loves me.
She hated me. Even when I did things that she required, she thought I did it wrong. I was like, you did the requirements. This is what you told me to do. Oh, I just remember the one day I turned around to drink water and you were like, oh my God, Lauren, she's looking at you. And I just turned around and she did that slow like finger movement. I was like, oh God.
I do that.
She once,
You know what's crazy is she wrote one of my recommendation letters for college. She loved me.
She really did. I just remember one time we did a group project and we turned in our paper. Were you in that group project with us? Okay. We turned in a paper and it was 5 pages and somehow she lost page 3. She was like, you never turned in page 3. We're like, so you got pages 1, 2, 4, and 5, but you did not get page 3.
Yeah,
okay.
that doesn't make any sense.
So we printed out page 3 and we added tombstones all over it. And we made the font, the little blood drippy font. And that's what we turned into her for page 3.
I remember when we were taking that test and we had written some things down in our agendas and she never got up. So when she did, we would just slide it underneath the chair. And then when she would walk back and go sit down, we would slide it back out between the 4 of us.
Yeah, she was awful.
She was.
I just remember she got mad at me for drinking water in class, and then another girl.
You remember when she would like hide at her desk? And
she would hide and eat. Or this other girl in our class also did cross country with me, and I remember our teacher looked at her and was like, "Oh, honey, you look a little thirsty. Why don't you go drink some water?"
I think she liked me because that's when I had my concussion, and she said that her daughter got a concussion, and so I think she had a soft spot for me.
She was awful.
She was.
Ugh.
I didn't like her, but she liked me.
Yeah, no, not a fan. Not a fan.
Anyway,
That's South Dakota. So yes, follow us on all the things, like us on all the things.
rate us on all the things.
Yeah.
Nicely.
Yeah. We'd appreciate it.
Please.
All right, so I guess that's all we have. So stay scary.
Stay safe.